I'm John Bollinger with Premier Guitar. We're in Santa Barbara, California at the Seymour Duncan plant, and I am with the man himself, Seymour Duncan.
Hello, folks.
Seymour, thanks so much for having us here. I'm a
Yeah,
long-time fan,
That's great.
first-time visitor.
Oh, good. Well, you got a little break in the weather, which is nice, you know.
Yeah, it's
We
fantastic.
all need that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I came here many years ago with Cathy Duncan, Cathy Carter Duncan, in Topanga, California. And she was friends with Bernie Led and Don Felder from the Eagles and everything. And she used to take care of Don Felder's kids when they were little sprouts, you know. And then we moved up here. We've been in Santa Barbara since about 1976. So that's when we started the factory. And I started doing rewinds for Schecter, Dave Schecter, years ago. And then I said, God, I want to make some pickups, you know. So we got a big order from Japan, and so I had to find this vulcanized fiber, which is the fiber that Fender used for all their flat work.
Yeah.
So I got the fiber, and then my other engineer here, Kevin Beller, we would route out each piece one at a time, and then we have to drill each hole out one at a time. I mean, we were making all the flat work by hand, which was incredible. You know, it was pretty wild. But I think doing it that way, you learn every right and wrong of how to do something. You know. And then we got a Roper Whitney punch, which was so neat. We made this fixture where we slide the flat work in and punch a hole, a 3/16 inch hole for the pole piece. So I did that, and then you move it over a little bit, and you do 3 holes, flip it over, and do the other 3 holes. And that helped us make all the Strat flat work and Telecaster. And then we got into P bass and the Jazz bass and the Jaguar and the Jazz Master. So we were routing out each piece and making all these holes. And then we would take the punch out holes in a pea shooter. Shoot them at the employees, you know. I mean, it was fun. I mean, we had a good time, and it was all learning, you know. What was really cool, though, we had guys from Fender would come up, and I remember, you know, back when I was in Bridgeton, New Jersey, I used to write this one guy, Bill Carson, from Fender, and I would ask him all these questions about when was the first year of a Telecaster, a Stratocaster, a Jazz Master, all these Fender guitars. And he would write me back. You know, like a month later, I get a letter from him. And then finally, like in 78, 79, I was at the NAMM show. And I'm walking around. I went to the Fender booth. So I was like a spring chicken here. Boy. So I go into the Fender booth, and I see this guy. His name is Bill Carson on his name tag, you know. And I said, Mr. Carson, I said, you won't remember this probably, but I used to write to you many years ago and ask you all these questions about when did you first manufacture these guitars, you know? And he looked at me and says, you're that guy. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, you're the guy that made me do all that work, you know. So he said, I had to go through all the old files because we never kept records of it, you know. And he said, you were so early at wanting to know about the history of the Fender company. You know, we thought it was very cool, you know. And then now here you are making guitar pickups and replicas and rewinds and everything. And he thought that was so cool, but he was one of the first guys that really helped me at Fender, you know. And then some of the Fender crew would come up to Santa Barbara, and they would see us manufacture. You know, we were doing one pickup one at a time, you know. And they would say to me, you know, Bill Carson would say, you know, when we used to do this, here's how we used to grind the magnets. We used to get like a stick with a hole in it and put a rubber grommet in it and slide the magnet into it and turn it on the grinding wheel, you know. I said, oh, okay. And then we started talking about waxing pickups, and I told him that I had a thing how I would vacuum wax the bobbins, you know, to get the air out of it real quick so you wouldn't have to leave them in too long, you know. And at the time, you know, I was rewinding all the Gibson style, the Melody Maker pickups, PAFs, all this. And some guys wanted them potted. And it was a big thing back in the early 80s and everything. Everybody was taking out all their old pickups and putting in all the new modern things that were out there. It could have been DiMarzio. We didn't, at the time I started rewinding, we didn't have humbuckers yet, you know. So for me, it was kind of neat that every pickup I got to rewind, I would take apart and measure everything. Man, I had
Wow.
the first tools were my calipers. You know, God, I love my calipers. You know, and then I made a dewinder so I could figure out how many turns were on each bobbin and everything. So that was how I started all the history and all the theory of all the different pickups and how they were all different and how I could tell if a pickup was hand wound or machine wound. And normally all the Gibson pickups were machine wound, not hand wound. And some people wind humbuckers by hand winding, and you shouldn't do that because both bobbins are different then. You know, you can't wind them exactly the same. So I figured all this out. I would count number of turns and all the magnet strength, and I had Gauss meters, and I made my own, you know, measuring tools for doing all this stuff, you know, for how to do it, you know. So that's how I started.
Isn't that amazing that back then you could, I mean, people today couldn't even fathom it, but now you can just order pickups, get whatever you want. Back then, if your pickup broke, you had to find a repairman to fix it.
Yeah, you either rewind or throw it in the trash and start over. I mean, some guys, you know, they try to work on their own guitars sometimes, you know, and I've seen messes out there.
Oh,
you know,
I've made those messes. Yeah.
You don't tell anybody that. So anyway, that's how. And then I bought my first coil machine, and then we got an old, I think it was a Bobbin coil machine, and that's how I did all my hand winding on that. All the Strats and all the single coils, Fenders type, were all hand wound that I would do, you know, and. So that's how it pretty much all started. And then we started doing more and more. And then we went to a place called Hughes Plastic in St. Joseph, Michigan. And it was told to me by the humbucker designer, Seth Lover. And Seth told me this is who made our bobbins, you know. And then Kevin and I contacted him. Kevin did the drawings, and we sent him up there. And I had to find a certain plastic. You know, I wanted a certain kind of, I think it was made by DuPont. And so they knew all the specs. They said, oh, you want this kind of plastic, blah, blah, blah. And so they started making them, and then we made our first bobbins. God, do you remember what year? Did MJ ever tell you that? No. It was like 79, 80 or something. And but it was in the first days of Seymour Duncan. And the cool thing is, having a humbucker back then was really kind of neat.
Sure. And
then I started doing, and that before that, that's when I did the Jeff Beck telegib with the first JB and a jazz model, a JM for John Milner. He was a character in American Graffiti. He had the yellow highboy, but I couldn't call it the John Milner because I did it for Jeff. I made the guitar to give to Jeff. And Jeff knew who John Milner was, but nobody else was doing it. So when I went in production, I couldn't call it the John Milner. I just called it the JM or a jazz model. Oh. And the JB was not for Jeff Beck. It was for jazz blues. So I just called it the JB, you know, and it's still like our main selling pickup here.
Well, and I think most of us players, we still think of that as JB as Jeff Beck.
Everybody does, you know, and he did Cause We Ended as Lovers, you know, with George Martin and stuff. Right. And that's how that whole guitar trade thing came about and stuff, you know. But he's still, to his last day, just a masterful player. You know, still one of my favorites, you know, of all time, you know. And it was neat. We got him at the NAMM show one time, and Dwayne Eddy was there and everything, and James Burton. We all got photos with him together and stuff. So I was very proud of that. You know?
Seymour, you were there for the entire history of like guitardom. It's really.
I grew up in a guitar era, which was great, man. Yeah. You know, the Fireballs, you know, George Tomsko, you know, and especially, you know, Dwayne Eddy and James Burton with all the Ricky Nelson stuff he did. I mean, his solos were masterful. I mean, to this day, they're...
To this day.
He was like 17, 18 years old, you know, just... the guy was just so cool, you know, and so I was... And my youngest son, Derek Burton, is named after James Burton, which was so cool.
That is so cool.
And so it was, for me, that was neat to do that, and so I've been very, very lucky, to meet all the players that I did, and I guess pay homage to them, all these great players,
Well, and really kind of helped them on their journey, I mean, you're part of their tone, so.
Yeah, I mean, I would think of it that way. And like I did Michael Cimbello when he did Maniac. I built the stack pickups that were prototypes in his guitar. And he got a Grammy for that, which was so cool, And so meeting some of these players, to me, is just incredible. Jesse Ed Davis, I just loved. He worked with Jackson Browne and all these sessions he did, and so many of them we lost so early too. All these great players, and that's why. And Danny Gatton and I were good friends. And Danny and I, we'd go out looking for arrowheads. We were up in Canada, and we were along the riverbeds in the mud, And we walked into this club that we were going to play at that night, And the club owner says, "Get the hell out of here," with those muddy clothes on. Yeah, who do you think you are? And Danny says, "Well, we're the band." It was so cool, I mean, to me, I just love it, And we traded I made him a bunch of arrowheads and stuff for like guitar picks and everything. But Danny was a fantastic player, it's just so good,
Mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing, And through the years, just meeting all these players, and then I would do all the Texas guitar shows, and then all the great guys were down there, I knew Albert Collins and, Gatemouth Brown, and I worked with all these guys, and I was so lucky to have had a chance to do that, And so it's cool.
Well, and it's amazing that all those relationships and all that work you did turned into this, and now we're gonna kind of see how it's all done.
Yeah, I want you guys to go around with Mark and Derek. Derek's gonna be here soon, and then just check out. And things grow and grow and grow. It's amazing. I just remember I still have my old office here, and I would work in it and do my rewinds and customize things, and that's the stuff I did. I'm into like engraving covers and stuff, and then I did a bunch of, probably the experimenting of new pickups, I've done a lot of that, and it was neat. Like we had George Fullerton come up here, and hang out with us and everything, and the people that are the guys that I looked up to growing up, from the Fender Company or Gibson. And I went to Kalamazoo, Michigan, and met Ted McCarthy, and I had lunch with him and everything. And so I was very lucky, and I would ask all these guys these questions about why did you do this or do that, And they knew that I really loved pickups. I wanted to know as much as I could about them. So I would get home at the hotel when I was in Kalamazoo, and I'd write down what building here, what equipment was over here, and I did all the drawings, So I would write everything down, what we talked about, and so I still have all my notes, And then
we got to see these notes.
Oh yeah, there I can show them to you later. But the fun thing too is like hanging out with Seth Lover, who invented the humbucking pickup, which to me is like, it's so cool, And the thing with him is I would stay down at his house in Garden Grove at the time. And he showed me all this stuff, and then he got pretty ill, when he was in his late 80s. And then when he passed away, his family gave me his whole garage of all his stuff,
Oh, that's beautiful.
All the transformers and testing equipment. And we were both in the ham radio, so they gave me all the ham radio equipment. A lot of it I gave to the local Santa Barbara club here, but he had like 10,000 tubes, radio tubes. It's like, gosh. So anyway, I got him to the club, and we did like a benefit for Seth and everything, and would give money to his family and everything. And we did the Seth Lover model,
Oh yeah.
And so that was really cool. And then he would get like a royalty for each pickup, and then he would give it to his kids for I guess college education and everything.
Sure.
So that was cool. You know, that's what he wanted.
I remember, I think the advertisement came out, and he had like a quote saying, "Why would anybody do a pickup with my name on it?" And it was very sweet, like
Yeah.
sort of a self-deprecating,
Yeah, I,
genius.
I know. Well, he designed the Thunderbird and the mini humbuckers and everything. He did the wide humbucker for Fender. You know, the
Sure, the
3-and-3 pole. I don't know. I don't even know what they call it. It's some model
the
number.
wide range, I think.
Yeah, wide range. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he designed that and everything, and so I have all his notes to all that stuff. You know, which is so cool. You
Yeah.
know, and it'll be in my book someday.
Okay, I look forward to reading it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have all this cool stuff. But I hope you guys have a good tour of the factory here. There's a lot of fun stuff to see, and you'll see a lot of history too.
Okay.
Stuff we got here. But
Can't
thank you.
wait.
Yeah.